The metal walls of Harmony Point Station hummed with the quiet buzz of air recyclers and power systems. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison walked down the main corridor, his blue uniform crisp and clean. He carried a small datapad in his left hand and nodded to the various alien crew members he passed. After 3 years on this station, he knew most of them by name. Jake had always been good at remembering names. It was one of the things that made him a successful peacekeeper. When you remembered someone's name, they felt important. When they felt important, they were more likely to listen to reason. The Kepler sector had been a problem area for 12 years now. 3 different alien species all wanted the same things: planets, resources, and respect. The reptilian Vector Empire thought they were the strongest and deserved everything. The insect-like Jiri collective believed their hive mind made them smarter than everyone else. The crystal beings called the Mordone Federation claimed they were the oldest and wisest. Jake had learned to work with all of them. He spoke their languages, understood their customs, and never took sides. In 3 years, he had stopped 17 different fights from turning into wars. Not bad for a human who most aliens still thought of as the new species. Today's meeting was about an asteroid field called the Silver Chain. Both the Vector and the Jiri wanted to mine it. The asteroids contained rare metals that both species needed for their technology. Instead of fighting over it, they had agreed to let Jake help them find a solution. The conference room was large and circular, with a big round table in the center. General Scart H of the Vector Empire sat on one side. He was 8 feet tall, with dark green scales and yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. His claws clicked against the table surface as he waited. Across from him sat Hive Speaker Cloak Tara of the Jiri Collective. She looked like a giant mantis with 4 arms and large compound eyes. When she spoke, her voice sounded like dozens of people talking at once, which always made Jake feel a little dizzy. Jake took his seat between them and activated his translator device. "Thank you both for coming today. I think we can find a way for everyone to benefit from the Silver Chain asteroids." General Scart H made a low growling sound. "The Vector Empire has claimed this territory for 6 months. We have the strongest fleet in this sector. The asteroids belong to us." Hive Speaker Clegg Tara's 4 arms moved in complex gestures. "The collective survey ships found the Silver Chain first. Our hive minds can process the mining data more efficiently than any other species. Logic dictates that we should control the resources." Jake had heard these same arguments many times before. Both species always claimed they were the best at everything. He pulled up a holographic display showing the asteroid field. What if we divided the field into sections? The Vector could take the outer ring, which has larger asteroids, better suited for your heavy mining equipment. The Jiri could take the inner ring, where the smaller asteroids would be perfect for your precision extraction methods. General Scarth's yellow eyes narrowed. "You suggest we share? A Vector do not share with insects. And you suggest we accept scraps from reptilian primitives?" Clegg Tara's compound eyes focused on Scart H. "The collective finds this offensive." Jake raised his hands for calm. "Please, let's look at the benefits. General Scarth, your outer ring asteroids contain 3 times more raw materials. Hive Speaker Cluck Tara, your inner ring has purer concentrations of the rare elements your people need. You would both get more resources than if you fought over the whole field and damaged it in the process." For a moment, Jake thought they were listening. Cluck Tara's arms stopped moving, and she tilted her head in the way that meant she was thinking. General Scarth leaned back in his chair, and his claws stopped clicking. Then Scart H stood up suddenly, his massive frame towering over the table. "I am tired of this human telling the Vector Empire what to do. For 3 years, you have interfered in the affairs of superior species. You are weak. Your people are weak. You have no right to dictate terms to your betters. Jake remained calm. He had dealt with angry aliens before. General, I'm not dictating anything. I'm offering suggestions that could help both of your peoples. Prosper. Prosper? Scarth's voice became a roar. The Vector Empire prospers through strength and conquest, not through begging for scraps like humans do. You are parasites, feeding off conflicts between real warriors. Jake stood up slowly, keeping his hands visible and non-threatening. I understand you're frustrated, General, but anger won't solve the asteroid problem. Let's take a break and come back to this later when everyone has had time to think. No more thinking. Scart H reached for the weapon at his side. No more human interference. The plasma blade ignited with a bright blue flash. Jake saw it coming and threw himself. Sideways, not to escape, but to shield Hive Speaker Cluck Tara from the attack. The burning energy cut through his chest, and he collapsed to the floor. Peace requires sacrifice, Jake whispered, blood on his lips. Not victims. Those were his last words. The recording devices in the conference room captured everything. Within hours, the footage was transmitted across the galaxy through quantum communication networks. Every human world, every space station, every ship in the fleet received the same terrible message. They had killed a Peacekeeper. On Luna Base, Admiral Lisa Chun watched the recording 3 times before she could accept what she was seeing. Jake Morrison had been one of their best. He had volunteered for Peacekeeper duty because he genuinely believed in making the galaxy a better place. Now he was dead, murdered for trying to prevent a war. Admiral Chun activated her emergency communication system and sent a priority message to Earth. Peacekeeper down. Hostile action by Vector forces. Request immediate orders. The response came back within an hour. President Alex Rivera's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. Admiral, you are authorized to implement Protocol 7. All human forces are now under unified command. The Vector Empire has 24 hours to surrender, General. Scart H for trial. If they refuse, we go to war. Admiral Chun had never seen Protocol 7 implemented before. She had helped write it years ago, but never expected to use it. Now, as she began sending activation codes to human forces across the galaxy, she wondered if the aliens truly understood what they had unleashed. The Vector Empire's response came exactly 24 hours later. Emperor Thraxer appeared on galactic communication channels, his massive form decorated with battle honors and ceremonial weapons. The human weaklings demand justice for their fallen insect. The Vector Empire does not bow to primitives. General. Scart H acted with honor in removing an obstacle to Vector glory. If the humans want war, they shall have it. We will teach them their place in the galactic order. The message ended with Thraxer F laughter echoing across space. You would not be laughing for long. Fleet Admiral Ben Foster stood in the war room beneath Geneva, looking at the largest holographic display he had ever seen. The 3-dimensional map showed every human colony, every trade route, every military base, and every ship in space. Red dots marked Vector positions. Blue dots showed human assets. What the aliens didn't know was that there were far more blue dots than anyone had ever imagined dot around the circular table sat the most powerful humans in the galaxy. Colonial governors joined the meeting by quantum link from distant worlds. Corporate executives who controlled vast shipping fleets waited for orders. Military commanders from every branch of human forces studied their tactical displays. Admiral Foster had been planning for this day for 20 years. Not this exact situation, but something like it. Humans had learned long ago that peace was fragile, and that someone would eventually test their resolve. Now that test had come. Ladies and gentlemen, Foster began, as of 1 hour ago, all human. Military and civilian assets are now under unified command. Protocol 7 is in effect. We are at war. Captain Emma Rodriguez attended the meeting from her ship, the heavy cruiser Phoenix. She had been patrolling the border between human and Jiri space when the orders came. Admiral, my crew is ready. What are our first targets? Captain Rodriguez, you and the Third Fleet will begin Phase 1 operations in the Outer Rim. Your target list is being transmitted now. Foster touched his control panel and sent encrypted orders to ships. Across human space. What those ships received would have shocked every alien government in the galaxy. For decades, human merchant vessels had been traveling the space lanes, carrying cargo and conducting trade. What the aliens didn't know was that every single merchant ship had been built with hidden military capabilities. Captain Tony Miller commanded what appeared to be a simple cargo hauler called the Steady Prophet. His ship carried farming equipment between human colonies in the Centauri sector. At least, that's what his manifest said. When Miller received his Protocol 7 orders, he smiled for the first time in months. "Attention, crew," Miller announced. "Over the ship's communication system, we have new orders. Seal all cargo bays and prepare for military conversion." The Steady Prophet's transformation took exactly 47 minutes. Hidden panels slid away to reveal weapon turrets. The cargo. Holds reconfigured into launch bays for fighter drones. The ship's modest engines switched to their true power settings, tripling the vessel's speed and maneuverability. All across human space, the same scene played out on hundreds of ships. Freighters became destroyers. Colony transports revealed themselves as troop carriers. Even small passenger shuttles began broadcasting military identification codes. Dr. Ryan Park worked in a laboratory on Mars, but his real job had nothing to do with medicine. For 12 years, he had been studying every piece of information that human peacekeepers and diplomats had gathered about alien species. He knew vector battle tactics, Jiri communication patterns, and Mordan technology weaknesses. The Vector have 17 major military bases, Park explained to the strategy team. But their real weakness is their pride. They always attack from the front because they believe surprise attacks are dishonorable. They also can't fight effectively in temperatures below 20 degrees Celsius. This kind of detailed intelligence existed for every major alien species. While humans had been playing the role of peaceful newcomers, they had actually been the galaxy's most thorough observers. Every diplomatic mission had included intelligence officers. Every trade agreement had revealed alien industrial capabilities. Every cultural exchange had mapped alien psychology. Commander Kyle Stevens received his orders while his ship was docked at Armstrong Station near Earth's moon. The Retribution had been Jake Morrison's favorite ship when he served in the fleet. Now it would be the first to avenge his death. "Crew of the Retribution," Stevens announced, "our mission is simple. We're going to show the Vector Empire what happens when you kill a human peacekeeper. Prepare for immediate departure." The aliens began to notice changes in human behavior within days of the declaration of war. Vector Intelligence Officer Thakmer monitored human communication channels from his post on the border world of Kreshta. What he saw confused him. Human merchant ships that had been traveling alone for years suddenly began moving in convoy formations. Civilian space stations started broadcasting military identification signals. Most puzzling of all, human diplomatic missions began withdrawing from non-essential sectors without explanation. Thakmer sent a report to his superiors. Human activity patterns have changed significantly. Recommend increased surveillance of human space. The response came back 3 hours later. Humans are cowards running from superior vector might. Continue monitoring, but take no action. If Thakmer could have seen what was happening in human space, he would have recommended immediate retreat instead. On New Texas, the The civilian shipyards had converted to military production overnight. Instead of building cargo haulers and passenger ships, they were now assembling destroyers and battle cruisers at 3 times their normal construction rate. The mining colonies in the asteroid belt stopped shipping metals to alien worlds and redirected everything to military production facilities. Human industrial capacity, spread across dozens of worlds and hundreds of space stations, had become the largest war machine the galaxy had ever seen. General Patricia Clark commanded the human base on Titan. Her official title was Colonial Defense Coordinator, which made the aliens think she commanded a small local militia. In reality, Clark controlled strategic reserves that included some of the most advanced military technology in human space. Phase 2 is approved, Clark announced to her staff. Begin deployment of the reconnaissance squadrons. I want to know the location of every Vector ship, base, and supply depot within 6 weeks. The reconnaissance squadrons were Commander Sarah Knight's specialty. Her stealth corvettes had been operating in alien space for years, disguised as research vessels and exploration ships. Now they would reveal their true purpose. Knight's ships used technology that humans had developed completely independently of alien science. While other species focused on bigger guns and stronger armor, humans had perfected the art of not being seen at all. Knight's corvettes could slip past alien sensor networks like ghosts. President Alex Rivera addressed the human population from his office in Geneva. The speech was broadcast to every human world, every space station, every ship in the fleet. My fellow humans, Rivera began, 12 hours ago, a Vector general murdered Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison in cold blood. Jake died trying to prevent a war. The Vector Empire has refused to surrender his killer for trial. They have chosen war instead of justice. Rivera paused and looked directly into the camera. For over a century, we have been the peacekeepers of this galaxy. We have prevented conflicts, mediated disputes, and helped other species resolve their differences. We did this because we believe in peace. We believe in justice. We believe that the strong should protect the weak, not prey upon them. His voice grew harder. The Vector Empire has demonstrated that they understand only strength. Very well. They wanted to see human strength. They killed a man who devoted his life to preventing exactly this moment. Now they will learn why humans value peace so highly, because we are exceptionally good at the alternative. The message reached alien governments within hours. Most dismissed it as typical human diplomacy. The Jiri Collective filed it under irrelevant political speeches. The Mordund Federation barely acknowledged receiving it. Only Emperor Thraxer bothered to respond. His message was brief. Let the human children come. The Vector Empire has been fighting wars since before their species learned to make fire. They will learn respect for their superiors. Admiral Foster received the Emperor's message in the Geneva War Room. He shared it with the assembled commanders, who responded with grim smiles. Gentlemen and ladies, Foster said quietly, I believe it's time to begin our education program. The Emperor wants to teach us respect. Let's show him what humans have learned about warfare in our brief time among the stars. The war was about to begin. The attack began at exactly 0600 hours, Galactic Standard Time, on 17 different Vector positions simultaneously. The aliens had expected humans to challenge them to an honorable battle, fleet against fleet in open space. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow any rules they understood. Captain Matt Turner commanded the destroyer squadron that hit the Vector mining world of Kethmer. The planet was supposed to be safe, protected by orbital defense platforms and a garrison of elite Vector warriors. Turner's ships appeared at the edge of the system like ghosts, moving silently through the asteroid field that surrounded the planet. Remember, Turner told his crew over the communication system, we're not here to destroy the planet. We're here to make a point. The Vector think they're safe behind their defenses. Let's show them how wrong they are. The first thing Turners people did was launch cyber attacks against the orbital platforms. Human computer specialists had been studying Vector technology for years. They knew exactly which systems to target and how to shut them down without triggering alarms. One by one, the defensive platforms went dark. Their crews never knew what hit them. The weapon systems simply stopped working. The sensor arrays went blind. The communication networks fell silent by the time the Vector garrison realized they were under attack. Human landing craft were already entering the planet's atmosphere. But these weren't normal troop transports. They were specially designed vessels that could operate in the extreme conditions that protected Kethmor from invasion. The planet's surface was a nightmare of toxic gases, crushing gravity, and temperatures that would kill most galactic species. Within minutes, the Vector had chosen it for mining operations because they thought no other species could survive there. They were wrong. Lieutenant Colonel Anna Price led the first wave of human soldiers onto Kethmer's surface. Her troops wore powered armor that made them stronger than Vector warriors and completely immune to the planet's hostile environment. They moved through the toxic clouds like deadly shadows. The mining complex is 2 kilometers north, Price reported to Turner. Vector defenders are taking positions in the main facility. They're trying to use the terrain to their advantage. Price smiled inside her helmet. The Vector were fighting exactly the way human intelligence had predicted they would. They formed defensive lines and waited for a frontal assault. They expected their enemies to charge directly into their guns like honorable warriors. Instead, Price's soldiers did something the Vector had never seen before. They disappeared into Kethmer's cave systems and began moving underground. The planet's geology, thoroughly mapped by human mining surveys years earlier, became their highway system. The Vector defenders waited for an attack that never came. Instead, human soldiers began appearing behind their lines, striking command posts and supply depots before vanishing back into the caves. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't see or predict. Commander Sarah Knight was busy proving that human stealth technology was far more advanced than anyone had imagined. Her Corvette squadron moved through Vector space like invisible hunters, striking supply convoys and communication relays before disappearing again. Knight's ship, the Silent Hunter, materialized next to a Vector supply depot without triggering a single alarm. Her crew disabled the facility's defenses, downloaded all their intelligence files, and destroyed their supplies in less than 10 minutes. By the time reinforcements arrived, the depot was empty and the attackers were gone. "This is impossible," the depot commander reported to his superiors. "Our sensors showed nothing. No ships, no energy signatures, no movement." Then suddenly, our entire facility was destroyed by invisible enemies. Similar reports began flooding Vector communication networks from across their territory. Ships appeared from nowhere, struck fast, and vanished before defenders could respond. Facilities that had been secure for decades suddenly found themselves under attack by enemies that seemed to exist only when they chose to be seen. The psychological impact was devastating. Vector soldiers began reporting ghost ships and demon warriors that appeared from thin air. Their rigid military training, designed for predictable honor-based combat, couldn't cope with an enemy that refused to fight fair. General Scart H himself decided to lead a retaliatory strike against what he believed would be an easy target. The human agricultural world of New Kansas had a population of only 50,000 farmers and their families. Scarth brought an entire battle fleet to crush them. These soft human farmers will learn the price of opposing the Vector Empire. Scart H announced to his officers, "We will make an example that will terrify their species for generations." Scarth's fleet arrived at New Kansas, expecting to find helpless civilians hiding behind minimal defenses. Instead, they discovered that human farmers were nothing like. Farmers on other worlds, not every settlement on New Kansas, had defensive positions that had been carefully prepared and camouflaged. Every farmer owned military-grade equipment and knew exactly how to use it. The local militia moved and fought with a coordination that suggested extensive military training. Farm supervisor Bill Carter had been a Marine sergeant before he came to New Kansas. When his sensors detected the incoming Vector fleet, he activated the planet's defense network with practiced efficiency. "All units, this is Defense Command," Carter announced over the planetary communication system. "We have hostile contacts inbound. Execute Plan 7. Show these lizards what human farmers can do." The first wave of Vector landing craft expected to face frightened civilians with farming tools. Instead, they found themselves under attack by heavy weapons that emerged from hidden positions throughout the countryside. Human defenders used their knowledge of local terrain, weather patterns, and seasonal conditions to devastating effect. Scarth watched in disbelief as his superior force was systematically torn apart by what he had thought were primitive farmers. His soldiers, trained for glorious combat, found themselves trapped in a nightmare of mines, ambushes, and precision strikes that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The humans used tactics that no honorable warrior would consider. They poisoned water sources that Vector physiology required. They used electromagnetic weapons that disrupted Vector technology, but had no effect on human equipment. They even weaponized the local weather, using storm systems to ground Vector. "Aircraft, this is not warfare," Scarth raged to his remaining officers. "This is barbarism. These humans have no honor, no courage. They fight like cowards and terrorists." Captain Rodriguez, listening to intercepted Vector communications from her ship in orbit, laughed at Scarth's complaints. "Honor doesn't bring dead peacekeepers back to life," she told her crew. "Let's see how honorable they feel when they're losing." The battle for New Kansas lasted 3 days. When it ended, Scarth had lost 60% of his force to farmers who had never attended a military academy. The survivors retreated in disorder, leaving behind enough equipment to supply a human army. But the real victory wasn't the equipment or the casualties. It was the message that spread throughout Vector space. Humans didn't fight the way other species fought. They didn't follow the rules. They didn't respect traditions. They simply found the most effective way to win and used it without hesitation. Emperor Thraxer received Scarth's report in his throne room on the Vector homeworld. For the first time since the war began, doubt crept into his mind. His forces were losing to an enemy that wasn't supposed to be able to fight at all. "How many human soldiers are we facing?" the Emperor asked his intelligence chief. "Unknown. My lord, our estimates range from millions to tens of millions. They seem to have unlimited reserves and can strike anywhere in our territory without warning." The Emperor's claws scraped against his throne. "Then we will strike at their homeworld. We will show them that the Vector Empire cannot be defeated by cowardly tactics." But even as he spoke, Emperor Thraxer wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The humans were proving to be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And this was only the beginning of the war. 6 months after the war began, the galaxy looked very different from what anyone had expected. Human forces had captured or destroyed 47 Vector installations, while losing only 3 of their own. The secret to their success wasn't just better weapons or tactics. It was something much more fundamental. Humans thought about war in ways that no other species had ever imagined. Colonel Chris Hayes stood on the bridge of the terraforming ship New Horizon, watching as his engineers transformed the Vector fortress. World of Raktar Prime. The planet had been considered unconquerable, protected by massive defensive installations and home to 2 million Vector soldiers. Hayes had decided not to conquer it at all. Atmospheric composition is now 30% Earth normal, reported Chief Engineer Lisa Park. Vector physiology will begin experiencing severe respiratory distress within 72 hours. Hayes nodded and watched the orbital displays. Giant mirrors redirected sunlight to change surface temperatures. Specially designed bacteria, harmless to humans but devastating to Vector technology, spread through the planet's air and water systems. The world itself was becoming a weapon. "This is wrong," transmitted the Vector planetary commander. "Worlds are sacred. They are meant to be conquered, not destroyed. Your species has no honor." "We're not destroying your world," Hayes replied calmly. "We're improving it. In 6 months, Raktar Prime will have a breathable atmosphere and comfortable temperatures for human settlers. Your people are welcome to evacuate any time they choose." The Vector couldn't understand this approach to warfare. To them, planets were prizes to be won through glorious battle. The idea of changing an entire world's ecology as a military tactic was beyond their comprehension. It was also terrifyingly effective. Dr. Nina Foster worked in a research facility on Europa, developing weapons that other species would never have thought to create. Her team had spent months studying Vector genetics and psychology, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited without causing permanent harm. "The fear response compound is ready for field testing," Dr. Foster reported to Admiral Chun. "It won't kill Vector soldiers, but it will make them experience overwhelming terror for approximately 6 hours. Their own brain chemistry will convince them that they're facing monsters." Admiral Chun approved the weapon's deployment with mixed feelings. Humans had always prided themselves on fighting cleanly, but the murder of Jake Morrison had changed many things. Deploy it against military targets only. Civilians are off limits. The first test of Dr. Foster's fear compound came during the Battle of the Helix Nebula. Elite Vector warriors, veterans of dozens of campaigns, suddenly found themselves cowering in terror as invisible enemies seemed to lurk around every corner. The psychological impact spread through their ranks like wildfire. Captain Luke Morgan commanded the carrier group that led the human assault in the Helix Nebula. His flagship, the Defiant, was destroyed in the opening minutes of the battle when Vector forces concentrated their fire on his position. Most commanders would have retreated or surrendered. Morgan simply transferred his flag to an escape pod and continued coordinating the battle from there. His mobile shipyards, hidden in the nebula's gas clouds, began manufacturing replacement vessels in real time. Within hours, human forces had actually grown larger than when the battle started. "How is this possible?" demanded Vector Admiral Kreshtok. "We destroy their ships faster than they can build them, yet their numbers keep increasing." What the Vector didn't understand was human industrial philosophy. While other species built massive shipyards in fixed locations, humans had learned to make their manufacturing mobile and distributed. Every human fleet included vessels that could produce fighters, drones, and even capital ships using raw materials gathered from asteroids and gas clouds. The psychological impact of this capability was enormous. Vector forces found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to regenerate faster than it could be destroyed. Human fleets appeared to be immortal. The war's impact extended far beyond the humans and Vector. Other alien species watched the conflict with growing amazement and alarm. The Jiri Collective and the Morgon Federation, initially neutral, began quietly supporting human efforts. Hive speaker Kaltara, the same Jiri delegate who had witnessed Jake Morrison's murder, met secretly with human diplomats on the neutral station Deep Space 7. The collective offers the use of our communication networks for human military operations, she announced through her multiple voices. Ambassador Carol Hughes, Jake Morrison's replacement, accepted the offer gratefully. Why is the collective willing to help us? Because we understand what this war is truly about, K.L. Katara replied. You fight not for conquest or resources, but to establish rules that protect the weak from the strong. This benefits all civilized species. The Morgan Federation made a similar decision. Elder Crystal Thonekar transmitted a message to Admiral Foster. The Morgan provides sanctuary for human wounded and refugees. We also share our knowledge of Vector military history. Your cause is just. For the first time in galactic history, multiple species were actively supporting another species' war effort without being formal allies. The reason was simple. Everyone could see that humanity was fighting for principles that would benefit the entire galaxy. Emperor Thraxer realized his empire was losing when human forces penetrated the Victor home system. Admiral Chun's fleet didn't attack the planet directly. Instead, they positioned themselves at strategic points around the system and began broadcasting a simple message. People of the Victor Empire, Admiral Chun announced on all communication channels, your government killed a human peacekeeper who died trying to prevent this war. We offer you one final chance for peace. Surrender General Scart H for trial, and we will withdraw our forces. Refuse, and watch your empire burn one world at a time. The message was accompanied by footage of what had happened to other Vector worlds. Raktar Prime, now an empty shell with an unbreathable atmosphere. Kethmer, its mining operations shut down and its garrison defeated by human farmers. Dozens of other worlds and stations, captured or destroyed by an enemy that fought unlike anything the Victor had ever faced. But the most terrifying part of the message was what it didn't say. The human fleet surrounding the Victor homeworld was enormous, but long-range sensors detected even more ships hiding in the outer system. Human industrial capacity, distributed across hundreds of worlds and thousands of mobile facilities, seemed to be infinite. General Scart H himself watched the message from his command bunker on the Vector capital. The same warrior who had murdered Jake Morrison, in a moment of pride and anger, now faced the consequences of his actions. An entire species had united to seek justice for the death of one peacekeeper. My lord, one of his officers reported, we're receiving communication requests from 17 planetary governors. They want to discuss surrender terms. Scarth's claws scraped against his armor. The Vector Empire does not surrender to primitives. With respect, General, the officer replied carefully. These primitives have just defeated our entire military in 6 months. Perhaps it's time to reconsider our position. For the first time since the war began, Scart H felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Not the chemical fear that human weapons could induce, but the real understanding that his people faced an enemy they could not defeat. In his bunker on the Victor homeworld, surrounded by the greatest fortress in the galaxy, General Scart H finally began to understand what Jake Morrison had meant when he said that peace required sacrifice, not victims. The question now was whether the Vector Empire would choose sacrifice, or continue to create victims until nothing remained of their civilization but ashes and regret. The end came not with a massive battle, but with a simple surrender transmission from the Vector homeworld. Emperor Thraxer appeared on communication screens across the galaxy, his ceremonial armor removed and his pride finally broken. The Vector Empire formally requests an end to hostilities, the Emperor announced, his voice barely above a whisper. We will surrender General Scart H for trial and accept whatever terms the human government demands. Admiral Chun received the message aboard her flagship in orbit around the Vector capital. After 8 months of war, the conflict was ending exactly as humanity had demanded from the beginning. Justice for Jake Morrison. Prepare a boarding party, Shun ordered her staff. We'll take custody of General Scart H within the hour, and send a message to Earth. The war is over. The capture of Scart H was surprisingly simple. The general, who had murdered a human peacekeeper in a moment of arrogance, now waited in chains, surrounded by his own guards, who had orders to hand him over without resistance. When human Marines arrived to take custody, Scarth looked like a broken creature. "You have destroyed my empire," Scart H said to Captain Rodriguez, who led the arrest team. "No," Rodriguez replied calmly. "You destroyed your empire the moment. You killed Jake Morrison. We just made sure everyone understood the consequences." 3 weeks later, representatives from every major species in the galaxy gathered on Nexus, prime for what would become known as the Great Trial. The enormous council chambers had never seen anything like it, an entire species demanding justice. For the murder of one individual, Captain Claire Reeves served as the chief prosecutor for the human government. She had been Jake Morrison's partner during his early peacekeeping missions and knew better than anyone what kind of man he had been. Her opening statement echoed across the galaxy. Jake Morrison died trying to prevent the very war that his murder caused, Reeves told the assembled delegates. He believed that peace was possible if good people were willing to work for it. General, Scarth killed him not in battle, not in self-defense, but because he couldn't accept that a human had something valuable to offer. The trial lasted 12 days. Human prosecutors presented evidence that the murder had been planned, not a crime of passion. Scarth had intended to test human resolve and show other species that humans could be killed with impunity. The plan had worked, but not the way he expected. For 12 years, Reeves continued, human peacekeepers worked to prevent conflicts like this one. We gathered intelligence, yes, but we also genuinely tried to help species resolve their differences peacefully. Every piece of military information we collected was intended to prevent wars, not start them. The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings showed Scarth's premeditated aggression. Communication intercepts revealed Vector plans to eliminate human influence in the Kepler sector. Most damning of all were Scarth's own words after the murder, bragging to his officers about teaching the human weaklings their place. Hive speaker Cluktara testified about what she had witnessed in the conference room. The human Morrison threw himself between General Scarth's weapon and my person, she told the court through her multiple voices. His final act was to protect one who had been his negotiating partner only moments before. This is the individual General Scarthi chose to murder. The trial revealed something else that shocked the galaxy, the true extent of human military preparation. Admiral Foster testified about Protocol 7 and humanity's hidden defensive capabilities. The peaceful humans who had seemed so vulnerable were actually the most prepared species in known space. We didn't build this military machine for conquest, Foster explained to the stunned delegates. We built it because we knew that someday someone would test our commitment to peace. We hoped that day would never come. General Scarth forced our hand. Emperor Thraxer was called to testify about his government's response to human demands for justice. His appearance shocked everyone who knew Vector culture. The proud emperor looked old and defeated, his scales dull and his movements slow. I believed humans were weak, Thraxer admitted. I thought their peaceful nature meant they could not fight. I was wrong about everything. They are the strongest species I have ever encountered, precisely because they choose peace when they could choose war. The emperor's testimony included a formal apology to the human government and the family of Jake Morrison. I accept full responsibility for this war, he concluded. My pride and arrogance led to the deaths of millions of Vector citizens and the near destruction of our civilization. General Scart H was found guilty of murder, war crimes, and crimes against galactic peace. His sentence was life imprisonment on a human world, where he would spend his remaining years learning about the primitive species he had so badly underestimated. But the trial's most important outcome wasn't Scarth's punishment. It was the creation of the Morrison Accords, a new set of galactic laws named after the murdered Peacekeeper. These laws established clear rules for peaceful interaction between species and severe penalties for those who broke them. President Rivera signed the Accords on behalf of humanity in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. These laws exist because Jake Morrison believed that peace was worth dying for, Rivera announced. We will make sure his sacrifice means something. The signing ceremony took place on a new space station built at the exact coordinates where Jake Morrison had been murdered. The Morrison Memorial Station became the headquarters for the new galactic peacekeeping force, with humans taking the leading role in maintaining galactic stability. Captain Amy Zhang, Morrison's designated successor, became the first director of the Memorial Station. She stood in the main conference room, the same room where Morrison had died, and addressed the first class of new peacekeepers from 12 different species. Peace isn't the absence of conflict, Zhang told the assembled trainees. Peace is what happens when people choose to resolve their differences without violence. Jake Morrison understood this. He died for this principle. Now it's our job to make sure he didn't die in vain. The war had transformed humanity's position in the galaxy completely. They were no longer seen as newcomers or weak diplomats. They had become the unofficial protectors of galactic civilization, the species other worlds called when they needed help maintaining peace. Alien students began attending human universities, studying not just human military tactics, but human philosophy about justice, peace, and the protection of the innocent. Human peacekeepers served on every major world, welcomed now as protectors rather than merely mediators. Emperor Thraxer abdicated 3 months after the trial, replaced by a council that immediately signed comprehensive peace treaties with every human world. The new Victor government began the long process of rebuilding their civilization, according to principles that emphasized cooperation over conquest. 1 year after Jake Morrison's death, President Rivera returned to the memorial station for the dedication ceremony. The station's central monument was simple: a statue of Morrison in his peacekeeper uniform, with his final words carved into the base. Peace requires sacrifice, not victims. Rivera's dedication speech became one of the most quoted addresses in galactic history. We didn't want this war, he told the assembled representatives from dozens of worlds. We wanted peace. But when General Scart H killed Jake Morrison, he forced us to choose between accepting injustice and fighting for what was right. The president paused and looked at the statue of the man whose murder had changed everything. Jake Morrison believed that the strongest species wasn't the one with the biggest weapons or the toughest warriors. He believed it was the one willing to fight, not for conquest, but for the right of others to live in peace. Today, because of his sacrifice, that principle governs our galaxy. The ceremony ended with the reading of Morrison's personal journal, discovered after his death. His final entry, written the night before his murder, said simply, "Tomorrow's mediation session will be difficult, but I believe both sides want peace." Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes good intentions and hard work can prevent a war. I hope I'm right. Jake Morrison had been wrong about preventing that particular war, but his death had prevented countless others, establishing a galactic order based on justice and protection of the innocent. In the end, his sacrifice had accomplished exactly what he had always worked for: a galaxy where peace was possible because the strong chose to protect the weak rather than prey upon them. The human species had learned a hard lesson about the price of peace, but they had also taught the galaxy an even more important lesson about the consequences of breaking it.